giving a face to addiction, because we're all kinds of people. We're no longer just the junkies that, the stereotypical junkies, literally. And then to show that recovery works, I think that's the piece that's hugely missed. We hear about all these horrible things that people do in their addictions. No one's ever out there going, look what this dude's done in the 5 years of recovery. I want to hear that story, because I think when you're in the midst of your addiction, you don't see that. You don't have the hope that goes, yeah, if I get sober, I'm going to have a great life, because you don't see it, right?
It's time for the Share Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host, O.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of TSP, the Share Podcast. And today our featured guest is my good friend Maggie Shores. She has such a beautiful and amazing story. I just loved our conversation. Maggie is truly an advocate for sobriety. She has her website and blog called Sober Courage. She also just started a brand new podcast with the Since Right Now podcast network titled the Sober Courage Pod, alongside our good friend Laura Silverman. And the thing I love most about Maggie is how genuine she truly is. She's so endearing, she's so lovable, and her story is horrific, dramatic, funny, and inspirational all at once. I hope you guys love it as much as I do. So let's dive into Maggie's story, but first, a little Share Podcast news. Okay, guys, first of all, thanks so much for everyone who has helped support the Share Podcast. And for those of you listening who would like to know how you can help support the Share Podcast, let me give you a couple of ideas. First of all, the most important one, which is absolutely free, is to leave a rating and review on iTunes. iTunes single-handedly is one of the most powerful ways for people to find the Share Podcast. So to make it easy for you guys, what I've done is I've put buttons on the website, www.thesharepodcast.com. Go there on the right-hand side. The very first button reads, subscribe on iTunes. Click on that button. It's going to send you directly to the iTunes podcast app. And from there, you'll click subscribe and then go to the section that says rate and review. And please leave us a 5-star rating. There's no question about it. iTunes is one of the best ways for our listeners to find the Share Podcast, especially when they're searching for it on Google. If you don't have an iPhone, then go to Stitcher Radio. It's the banner right underneath the subscribe on iTunes. Click on that and do the exact same thing. Subscribe and then leave a 5-star rating and review. There's no question about it. This is the best way for you to show your support. I also want to thank all the listeners who have been clicking on the Amazon banner ad. Folks, for those of you wondering what's another fantastic way to support the show is by clicking on that banner before you shop on Amazon. You're going to shop on Amazon anyway. It's not going to cost you 1 penny more, and it kicks back some commission to the Share Podcast. We've already seen a dramatic increase in commission since we added the banner ad. So thanks again, guys. It's helping so much. And as far as being of service, you can also go to the website and click on the Join the Facebook Private Group banner. It'll take you right to the Facebook private group where you can request to be added and do some service. There's newcomers in there that are posting daily, old-timers sharing experience, strength, and hope. It's an absolutely beautiful way to contribute to your own recovery as well as to those in the community. So plug yourself in, get into that private Facebook group. It's absolutely thriving. And again, it's a wonderful way for everyone to be of service. And of course, I want to give a big thank you to all of the listeners who have continued to give donations every month. Thank you guys so much for your generous donations. And for those of you that would like to contribute and help grow and support the Share Podcast financially, you can go to the website, click on the Donate with PayPal button, and it'll take you to the page where you can make your donation. And for those of you that use Sober Grid or are looking for an app on their phone where you can find meetings, have a sobriety calculator, connect privately with members of your local recovery community, or when you travel, connect with members in recovery in order to find a meeting, then you might as well join the private alumni group for Share Podcast listeners. So go into the Sober Grid menu once you've registered. Scroll down to where it says Alumni Group, click on Add Group, and type in SHAIR, and the Share Podcast Alumni Group will pop right up. And finally, I want to give credit to the Share Podcast team that is instrumental in producing the Share Podcast, Zinzi Gugu and Evelyn E., who handle the audio editing for each podcast episode, Omar Hernandez, that does all the social media cover art, and Krista Wojo, who handles all of our social media marketing. Without this amazing team, there's no way I could have continued to produce the podcast every week. Thank you guys. I couldn't do this without you. So now a quick message from our sponsor and on to the show. Sober Nation is the largest online recovery community and treatment resource center. They provide treatment resources to those struggling with addiction, as well as to the family members who are caught in the crossfire. On top of that, Sober Nation is a huge community of good people who share their experience with each other. They have informative content, recovery and addiction news, as well as an entire clothing line which helps expand the culture of recovery. They can easily be found at www.sobernation.com. Sober Nation is putting recovery on the map. And finally, would you like to receive the most popular AA daily devotions free in one distribution? Transitions Daily delivers daily devotions from the 24 hours a day, AA Thought for the Day, Daily Reflections, Big Book Quote, Just for Today, As Bill Sees It, plus more. You can get our distribution daily via email, private Facebook group, or Twitter. Go to dailyaaemails.com for more information. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends in meetings and with sponsees in recovery. Now back to the show. Hey Maggie, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to have you on the show today. How are you feeling?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm feeling fantastic. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Great.
All right. So, folks, today we have Maggie Shores joining us on the Share Podcast. Maggie, for those of you that don't know, is the founder of Sober Courage, a blog dedicated to getting and staying sober. So, Maggie, let's dive right in.
Yes.
First, tell us about how your life is today. You know, I'm sure it's pretty hectic with the kids. So tell us about your normal daily routine, including recovery.
Well, yes, life with kids is hectic. So I can't even begin, but I do have a routine. You know, I get up in the morning. I actually take some time to say hello to the higher power up there. And then I just start, I take my kids to school. Then I get on the metro train and I take the train to work. I actually do some meditation on the train, which a lot of people think is weird, but there's something about the humming of the train and people are really quiet in the morning. That's actually really cool, And then before I walk to work, I say, help me be of service today. And I get through the day. Then I go home, do all the other chores, get schoolwork done, get kids to bed. And then maybe I have a couple hours at the end of the night for myself. That's about my regular day during the week. So as far as recovery, recovery is every day. So even though I didn't just mention it, I probably talk to someone in recovery at least every couple hours.
Yep.
And this is why I love the internet, because I'm always connected to someone in recovery. Whether I just say, hey, have a good day, or how is your day going, or, I'm having a crappy day, or I read something that someone else is sharing. It's all like part of my recovery every day.
That's beautiful. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So as far as meetings, I have a schedule. So I'm going 2 days a week, and my husband goes 2 days a week. So we always go those days. We go at least one meeting a week. And that's basically because even at this point on our recovery, we need the meetings. We went through a period of about 2 years where we barely went to meetings when the kids were little, there were babies, and it felt like you just did not have time, not a minute to sneak out, but we were just getting really edgy. And personally, I got really worried because the stress of your child crying and trying to keep up with everything and working and everything else. I just needed at least that 1 hour to decompress, get with my people, in recovery, and just get my higher power connection back. And then I was all right. So we continue that, and it's probably going to be forever. It's fine with me. It works.
And that's the funny thing. I've been asked before, well, are you always going to have to go to meetings? And I go, no, I don't always have to go to meetings. I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. Right. But I love going to meetings.
Right.
And I love connecting with my people. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I get so busy, especially like when my first year of marriage, we were so, you're in that honeymoon stage. So I just wanted to rush home and hang out with my wife and go to dinner all the time. And then all of a sudden, she starts noticing that I'm acting differently.
Yeah. It's bugging you.
Yeah.
My husband's in recovery also. So it'd be, the conversation is like, you need a meeting. No, you need a meeting. It's like, oh no.
When the fights go back and forth about who needs a meeting the most. Oh man. It's like, how about we both go to a meeting?
Yeah, right. And that's kind of how it started. I'm like, pick a day and I'll pick a day and that's it. We're going. Damn it.
So I'm assuming that when you go to a meeting, he takes care of the kids and vice versa.
Right.
Okay. So that's beautiful, man. That's how it's supposed to work. And, that's the beautiful thing about recovery, especially if you're a couple in recovery, then there's really no excuse as to, oh man, I can't make a meeting. Plus, you don't want to go to the same meeting with your husband. You want to be able to share openly and not have that kind of like, man, should I say this? Should I not say this? No, you don't have to worry about that. So I think what you guys have going on over there is a really great example of how to make the program work for you, for the benefit of the relationship and also for each other's recovery. So I think that's super, super cool. So you mentioned a little bit about staying in conscious contact with your higher power. Can you expand a little bit more about how you maintain that on a daily basis?
Sure. I'm not a religious person, so the concept of higher power was really difficult for me to grasp. But I'll get into my story and why and all that. But once I got connected and I saw the power in it, I just feel like it's always around me. I had a sponsor that used to tell me you have to look for God shots. And she would tell me to write these things on a piece of paper that I would normally discard as just weird coincidences. And I started writing all this stuff and I said, oh my gosh, this couldn't have just happened, and that's how it began for me. And so I kind of look for those parts in my daily routines that kind of happen. And it's funny because I was actually thinking today to pick one out that I could tell you about that maybe happened today. And I couldn't think of one, which is crazy, but they happen all the time, I swear. So I don't have a set prayer. I don't have a set routine. I kind of go through the day sort of just talking to him, her through my day, whether I'm asking for patience or for guidance in something I don't know how to solve. Or today I'm exhausted. I don't know why. I'm just exhausted. I think maybe it's the pollen in the air, whatever. But, I was just asking for a little more strength to keep going. Just let me get through this day and, everything will be fine. And I don't know. I don't have a set concept, but I know it's there. And I know without my belief in the strength and the power, I don't think I could be sober. And I know that for a fact. I couldn't be sober today. And I'll tell you all about that in my story.
Good.
But,
No, that's perfect. That's beautiful. And I asked that question for a reason. There's so much resistance in the beginning to the idea of a higher power because it's so misinterpreted, or it just gets hooked up with or combined with the idea of a punishing God in a religion.
Yes.
So your first thought is to resist and to reject the idea of a higher power because you fought for so long to break away from everything. And so once you get into recovery, and it's always a soft sell. It was soft soul to me, and it sounds like it was soft soul to you. And look for God shots, look for coincidences, look for those, small miracles that happen. And when that started happening for me, that's when I really, 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 a few God shots happened, a few spiritual awakenings. And I'm like, I like this.
Right.
I can totally see it, but not only can I see it, I can feel it.
Right.
And just like any good addict, whenever something feels good, I want more.
I'll just take all of it now.
I'm serious.
Yes.
I ran with it. Okay. So tell us, Maggie, how much clean time do you have and when is your anniversary date?
My anniversary date is April 15th, and I will have 8 years of sobriety.
Beautiful.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Wonderful.
So let's go back in time and tell us about how old you were the first time you drank or used drugs. And more importantly, how did they make you feel?
Well, my mom was an alcoholic. So when I was a kid, I didn't really know her. She lost custody of me, but I knew of what was happening, even though I was little. And then later on, my family would, tell me or talk negatively about her. So I was petrified to touch anything, drugs and alcohol, for a very long time. So I actually went through all of high school and most of college without drinking. And if I did, I literally had like one glass of wine, and then I started feeling the buzz, and I would be like, oh my God, that's it. I'm going to be an alcoholic. And the fear was basically on whatever memories I had and whatever I heard from my family. The funny story is when I was 21, I went to the store to get a 6-pack of wine coolers, or 4-pack. I can't remember what they come in, but I bought 2 4-packs of wine coolers because at least I had to show my ID,
Yep.
for my 21st birthday. And I went home and I had like 3 friends over and I had 2 wine coolers, and it happened again. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting drunk. That was my drinking very early on. It just didn't, I was so scared of it. It just scared me, really.
I got you. I totally get it. Most of the time when I ask this question, it's usually the same. I had it. It was the best feeling ever. I just felt like all this weight was lifted off of me and I was fearless and blah, blah, blah. And for you, it was very different. It was very different. There was a lot of negativity associated, a lot of fear.
Oh, I wanted
guilt,
to drink.
shame.
I wanted to party with my friends. I felt like an outsider then. I mean, I was invited to some parties and stuff, and I pretended to be drunk. That's how I kind of went through it.
Oh,
I would like sip on something and pretend to be drunk, and then I would be going home going, oh my God, I drank. Maybe I'm an alcoholic. The fear was horrible, yeah.
Oh my God. Maggie, you are all warmed up, my dear. So it's time for me to turn this show over to you. It's time for you to tell us your story, the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and finally your journey into recovery up until today. So Maggie, take it away.
All right. As I was just saying, I was very fearful of drinking and drugs or any of that stuff. Yet I was sort of always around people that did it. I liked that atmosphere and made me kind of happy, and I felt like I had friends. So eventually, slowly, I did start drinking. I was bartending for 3 or 4 years. And of course, after bartending, we were always going out to drink. And then I was a bar manager, so I was buying my employees drinks. And I sit often and I try to figure out when it actually happened. But I was probably in my late 20s, somewhere around 27, 28, when my drinking started to really pick up. Like, I would notice that I stopped drinking with girls. I was drinking with guys because the girls couldn't drink as much as me. And I started feeling really like, okay, this is not right, So I would drink with the guys, and eventually sometimes I would drink more than the guys. But I didn't have any issues really. I mean, yeah, I would get drunk here and there, but I kept thinking, well, if I was an alcoholic, I'd be an alcoholic by now. If it's genetic, I'm definitely, I should have been already an alcoholic by the time I was 15 or something. That's what was in my head. But slowly it like crept up on me, and everything started evolving around drinking. So when I was like 26, I was born in Poland. I forgot to mention that, but I was born in Poland, so I'm Polish. So not enough that it's genetic, but I also have the stereotype of a drinker. And I kind of used to crack jokes about it. Oh, I'm just Polish, I can outdrink you. Don't worry, I'm Polish. I can handle this. But I went back home to visit. I was 27, and there was always alcohol everywhere. And, not knowing that I had a problem or not seeing that I had a problem, I just drank. And even though there's alcohol always around in Polish houses, it's like on the table, there's a bottle of vodka. People drink it warm, cold. They don't care. I should have known then that something was different about me, because someone would take a shot and like walk away and do something else for 2-3 hours, maybe come back, have another. No, I'm like sitting there every half hour. I'm having a shot, then I'm drunk 2 hours later. And everybody's going, what the hell did you drink? And I'm saying, oh, I just had a couple of shots,
Yep.
And I didn't know it then either, but I recently talked to my brother who lives in Poland about that trip. And he said, we were really worried about you. And I was like, how come nobody told me they were worried about me? I guess it's kind of a family thing. I don't know. I don't know why nobody told me. I don't know. Anyway, so after that, I just kept going. And only a couple years later, my troubles started. So I got my first DUI when I was 30. I actually blew so high that I had no restricted license, had automatic jail time, and I had to go to ASAP classes, ADS, and I got signed up to go to AA. And of course, all I was thinking was, well, I'm just going to get through this and continue my drinking because I'm not an alcoholic.
Right.
And the funny story with this is that I actually sold my car because I couldn't drive and they wouldn't give me a restricted license. So I thought, well, I can't drive at all. What if I get drunk and I'm in a blackout and I decide to drive and then I get another DUI? So I sold my car, you see, because quitting drinking was not an option.
Right.
So I sold my car and learned how to use public transportation.
Nice.
And I told everybody, I remember telling everybody, I'm saving so much money, you guys. It's great. Never mind that I got a DUI. I was just saving money. So after that, things really started going down the hill. Because I didn't have a car, I was buying more alcohol and I was drinking more at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I started not having really friends because I couldn't really go anywhere. I was too embarrassed to ask people for rides or hang out or meet people. And at 31, I met my ex and I became pregnant. My ex and I had, a perfect relationship. He drank, I drank, and we drank. And that's about all we did. And I guess it helped that, he had money. So it was just free for all. It was like, I've arrived.
Yeah.
I felt like I've arrived. Look at this. I got money and booze. It's great. But then I got pregnant. And the minute I found out I was pregnant, I said, oh my God, I've been drinking and smoking. And I quit cold turkey. Quit. Totally. To this day, I kind of wonder how that happened. I don't know if it was the, female guilt or I have no idea. My sponsor would say, because I asked her, what do you think? How did that happen? And she would say, you knew that you were going to go back to drinking.
Mm.
And I thought, man, did I? Well, yes, I guess I somehow did because I managed to be sober through the whole pregnancy and the first 3 months. And somewhere around 3 or 4 months, I started drinking after I gave birth. And at first, I was just thinking, wow, I'm so tired. Okay, you have kids, right? You know how that first month is.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy. It's insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't sleep, you don't eat. You're lucky if you shower. And I was thinking, I'm so tired, a drink would be just so nice. I'll just have one to pep me up. And basically within a couple months, I was passing out, blacking out, a complete mess.
Yeah.
My ex, righteously so, took her away from me. So I actually lost custody of my daughter. And, that was a really difficult time. And it's really hard to talk about it still because that's, it's a lot of shame and guilt, which I'm still working through. I think I've worked through most of it. I think when I start talking about it, it kind of comes back up.
Sure.
But, that was a really difficult time. I was court ordered to rehab and I had to do parenting classes. And of course, I had a court case because my ex decided he was going to file for sole custody. So it was just a crazy period of time. But this is how crazy the disease is. I still managed to drink in between all of that stuff, in between breathalyzers, court dates, and all these other things that I had to do. I managed to drink. And back then, that seemed okay. I was like, well, this just happened because, I have bad luck. There's parents out there that drink all the time. You see it on the news. I mean, on TV, they're like, oh, I'm tired. Let me have a drink. That's what I was doing. I just got busted. The mind, that's what was in my head. I didn't do anything wrong. It took me like 2 years after that to actually look at it and go, no, my ex wasn't an asshole. He was protecting my kid, our kid. No, I wasn't fit mother. I was completely unfit. Took a really long time to actually come to terms with that because I could make up anything in my head of, why I wasn't wrong. But I did regain custody and I was kind of managing my drinking. I had this plan. I'd like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then every other weekend. I mean, it was insane, insane. And even though sometimes I was like, I don't think normal people do this. I kept thinking, well, it's working. I haven't gotten busted in 2 years after my case was closed. So, why not? What's wrong with this? So I kind of continued. And this whole time I was also going to meetings. I also had a sponsor. I was sort of doing steps. I was like, everything on the outside kind of looked okay. I finally had my own place. I had a job. And it just seemed like everything was dandy. I had my life back. That's what it felt like. I had my life back. My last drunk was not planned at all, but it was my weekend without my daughter. And it was a beautiful sunny day. I was, again, probably 3 months sober because I was like on and off. Life was kind of falling into place. Everything was nice. I had a decent job. I had a decent apartment. I didn't have any boyfriends and stuff, which was actually good because it kept me nice and calm and quiet. And it was a beautiful spring day and it was a Friday and the sun was shining and I'll never forget it because everything was pretty good in my life. I could not tell you that day that there was something wrong at all. And I walked to the store and I thought, I'm going to buy myself some really good food, treat myself right. And I love steak and I think cheese and grapes is what I was going to get. So I went to the store and I'm walking through the wine aisle to get to the other side of the store to the meat section to get my steak. And just like that, I'm walking through the aisle and I stop and I turn and I grab a bottle of wine. And I'm standing there in front of the shelf and it's like completely different person. I went through this whole scenario like 20 times in my mind and it's been always the same. I don't know what happened. I literally don't know what happened. In that split second, it was like, oh, that wine looks good. Let me get 2. But 2 looks weird. Maybe I should get a bigger bottle. Well, now I have to get more food. Well, if I'm going to get a bigger bottle, that's not going to last me tonight. Then I need to get a box. I mean, it just started turning. From a box, I have 2 boxes of wine now, and I have 3 steaks because somehow I have to even it out to make it look like, I'm actually having a party or something. The craziness, it was so crazy. There was no thought like, oh my God, what am I doing? Why is nobody stopping me? Why am I not stopping? That was it. I put it in the cart. I paid for it, walked out, and I was home. And I poured a glass, and I remember sitting on the couch watching TV, and that's about all I remember. And the next time I woke up on the kitchen floor with my face down on the kitchen floor, and the phone was beeping. And I was thinking, why the hell is the phone beeping? And it was daylight coming through the windows. And I kind of scooted myself to the phone that was in arm reach. And the date on the phone said Monday. It said Monday, 7 a.m. I can't even describe what went through me. I just kept thinking, what the hell? It was Friday. It was Friday. How come it's Monday? I don't get it. What the hell happened? I was trying to get up and I was all beat up. Like, I think they were all house injuries, literally just falling down around the house because there was nobody in my house. It was just me. It was crazy. It was really crazy. I was so hungover and in so much pain. I finally managed to get up and I was in a lot of pain. And I look over on the stove and the steak is still on the stove, burnt to crisp. I don't know. I guess I turned the stove off at some point. Thank God. And then I had this moment, like I said, well, there's got to be more alcohol around here. And there was. So I poured another glass of wine. As I'm drinking this, I'm going, what the hell has happened? The fear, the shame, the guilt, there was so many things that went through me. And I had that moment where, well, I've really hit the bottom. Look at me. Look what's become of me. And I thought, well, I still have wine. I just continue drinking. Maybe I'll die because I don't know how I'm going to continue from this.
Oh, man.
And then, and then I thought of my kid. My kid was, if I do that, my kid will have no mother in their life like I did. I didn't have a mom. My mom was gone when I was 3, almost 4. And the whole, my childhood flashed in front of my eyes. I mean, that's such a weird experience. I didn't know till later that was my first God shot. At least that's what I call them, because it was such a strange experience. And I chose to live. I picked up the phone. I called my sponsor. I went to 4 meetings that day, and I just cried all day. And that's how it started. So it was a very, very crazy instance, or my rock bottom. I had worse rock bottoms. I was in jail. I lost custody of my kid, DUI. Oh, I forgot to mention the numerous trips to the local hospital where I was just drying out and detox. But that didn't make me stop. It was that moment, that crazy moment. So I picked up the phone and I called my sponsor, and she took me to an 8 a.m. meeting, or maybe it was 8:30. I don't remember, but I sat and cried in that meeting, the whole meeting. And then we went to a noon meeting, and I took the next 3 days off. And I'm surprised I didn't lose my job, but I told him some story about rollerblading. I don't know why, but anyway. So I had 3 days. So she helped me, dry out and go through the DTs. And we just went to meetings. And then she gave me a CD from Sandy Beach, the AA speaker. And on that CD, he goes through the steps. It's his interpretation of the steps. And one of the parts that he says in the very beginning of the CD, he says, what if today you decide to forgive everyone and everything that ever has done you wrong in your life? And I don't know what happened, but it was another God shot. But I thought, oh my gosh, that's it. That's it. My whole life I spent blaming everybody for everything. My mother was this. My father was this. My whole family was that. My education was sucky because my parents didn't have money. And I'm this because I'm whatever. Everything was blamed on somebody else. The world has done me wrong. So in that moment, I had this wow, what if I could really forgive my family? And the weirdest part is that as I'm stuck on this, what he just said, the second thing he says, what if your parents did the best they could? And he says, not that they did good, but the best that they were capable of doing. And I thought, oh my God, there's another piece to my puzzle.
Yeah.
What if my parents really just were not capable of being any other way than they were? They were 2 sick people.
Mm-hmm.
And it just started rolling from that. Another thing that my sponsor said, I'll never forget, she said, you wake up every day and you just erase your past. You erase everything. Today, you know nothing. And I thought, well, that's impossible. I can't get up every day and go, I don't know nothing. What do you mean I know nothing? I'm educated. I'm this, I'm the other. No, you know nothing. I was like, oh my God, this is impossible. But somehow, I don't know, I was getting up and going, I know nothing. And that opened me up for a lot of things. It's hard to explain, but it really did. It just opened me up to the AA. And I started seeing AA in different light. Because before I was court ordered. So it was just this thing I had to attend and kind of hang out. And it wasn't a bad social gig either. So it was there. But it never seemed to me to be a recovery journey, the steps and everything. And I started seeing it as a recovery journey. She She asked me to read the first step every night. I know, made me.
I love it.
She was like, yeah, you do it. No, every day for, a month, you read first step. And I thought, oh my God, it's the shortest step in the book. And you still want me to read every day. And let me tell you, almost every day I found something new in there. Something completely new. Like, oh, how come I see this today? I just read this for the last 10 days and I see this today. And it still happens to me. After 8 years in recovery, I will read something in the 12 and 12 or the big book, and I'm going, I know I've read this before. but it's making even more sense now. So it was a very slow beginning. Like when she said, today you're a brand new person and you know nothing, that's how it felt. And I just kept going and I just kept going. And honestly, even though I did want to drink, I think the physical withdrawal part, the physical cravings were there. I was willing to do anything in my power not to drink again. And that whole moment where I was in the grocery store and out of the blue, I'm picking a bottle of wine.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to make sure that freaking moment will never happen again. So I was, I stopped going to grocery stores. I was actually shopping at Target because the Target by my house didn't sell alcohol.
I love
They
it.
do now. But when I started, they didn't sell alcohol. So I was shopping at Target. I was eating at Target. I was shopping at Target. That was it. I did not go anywhere there was alcohol. I wouldn't even visit my family. I was really adamant. Like, I couldn't watch shows with drinking. I couldn't see magazines with drinking, ads with drinking. I was just like, no, it's just not going to happen. And I still do that to some extent. Like, I don't belong in a place where there's booze. I just don't. I don't want to be there. And part of me, I don't think I trust myself. In my head, this weird shit goes on. It really does. So I remember reaching my first year. In one of the meetings I used to go to, they would pass around a board. Everybody would check off their dates and information. And then at the end would say, anybody with a year or more, raise your hand so you can sponsor. And I raised my hand. And it was like the greatest moment ever, I swear. I felt like I won the biggest prize on the planet Earth. I mean, tears rolling down my face. I'm like, yes! It was an incredible feeling. I met my husband in recovery. And that was pretty cool. And we did go through a period where we were going to meetings together, dating meetings. It was cute. But we kind of realized after a while, wasn't quite recovery there.
Oh,
but
yeah.
We ended up going to dances together and picnics and all that stuff. So that was kind of cool. And then we got married and we had a sober wedding, which was really crazy because I would never imagine not drinking at my wedding. And the funny part about all of this is that at the very end, like a week before our wedding, I completely freaked out. And I told my mother-in-law, I said, we have to have wine at the wedding. Nobody's going to show up if there's no wine at the wedding. And it's not like our invitation said, come to our wedding, but there'll be no wine, right? So nobody would know if there was any alcohol or not. But somewhere in my head, I kept thinking, nobody's going to show up. They're going to leave midway. They're going to be like, there's no booze, run, because that's how I was. In the midst of my drinking, there was no booze. Why am I here, So my mother-in-law is also in recovery, so they actually had somebody else. They had our wedding coordinator. Okay, can you buy a couple cases of wine? Just stick them under the beverage bar, because we made a big beverage bar where you could make all kinds of non-alcoholic drinks. We told her to stick them under the table, and then in case someone comes up and says, can I have some wine? Then you just whip it from underneath the table. Well, you know what? Nobody missed the wine.
No.
And there was like 2 bottles gone out of the 2 cases that we bought. And I, for weeks, was telling this story about how we absolutely had to have wine.
Yeah.
My daughter, who's now 12, it's been great. She's my number one advocate, I think. She's always telling me how good I'm doing. And, that's because she actually remembers some of the things. She was 4 when I got sober. And there were some instances where I did drink while I had her in my custody. I didn't get drunk. That was the times that I made sure absolutely I didn't get drunk. But she remembers some weird little instances. Oh, that happened or this happened or I don't know. So I actually sat her down and, I talked to her about it, sort of did like a, 9-step amends. And that was great. That was great. And then I have 2 boys that I had in sobriety. And one's 7 and the other one's 4. And wow, I'll never have to have that talk with them. Maybe not about my drinking, probably maybe about something else, but I won't have to explain that. But we're really open in our house about recovery. So the kids all know. Well, the youngest one, he's only 3. He doesn't really understand, but we're pretty open about our recovery. And that's my story.
Maggie, what an amazing story you have. I absolutely love it. And more than anything else, I can relate to so much of your story. There is the part where you're sitting at the meeting and either you were at a meeting or you were listening to one of those speaker tapes, and the person sharing was talking about how maybe your parents did the best that they could.
Yeah. Oh,
And
I got chills. Yeah.
yeah, I remember, it just gave me chills, as a matter of fact, because I had forgotten how huge that was in my recovery, because I blame my parents for so much, so much. I held so much over them. And the reality of the fact that they're just human beings having a human experience, doing the best that they can. And here we are not knowing the road that it took for them to find each other, get married, have kids, and then try and figure it all out.
Right.
I mean, who am I to judge? And it was like, whoa, not only was I able to forgive them, but I was able to forgive myself. I was able to take a lot off my plate, because all the guilt and shame and remorse that I felt, I quit drinking and using when my daughter was born. She was 3 months old when I had my last drink.
Awesome.
Yeah, so she has no idea, right? But even still, all that guilt and shame of what I had done to her mother and how I'd ruined our marriage and all of that I couldn't let go of. Once I was able to forgive my parents, I was actually able to forgive myself.
Right. Yeah.
And
that's huge.
Yeah. So when you just mentioned that in your story, I was like, oh my God, I just went back in time. I just went back about, I don't know. We're talking close to 10 years now when I actually worked through that part of the step work. And I mean, you're really cheating yourself. You're really cheating yourself if you don't take this program seriously, if you don't work the steps. The fourth step changed my life in ways that I can't even comprehend or explain to anyone who hasn't worked it. It's just, It's so cleansing. It's so liberating. So yes, I absolutely related to so much of your story, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful for men. It's beautiful for women, because we can all relate. There's so much of your story that we can all have a part of, and how it affected you, that just knowing that you also played the same role in your daughter's life that your parents played in your life. And and how recovery has just brought you guys all together. It's a wonderful and beautiful thing. I absolutely love your story. Thank you.
You're welcome. If I may add, you just remind me of the same thing that happened to you. I was able to understand what my mother went through and forgive her. Yes, it's a huge circle. Huge. Just absolutely amazing.
There is so many God shots, so many spiritual awakenings when you're working the steps. When somebody tells me, hey, do I need to get a sponsor? Do I need to work the steps? Because I don't know if you've noticed in the share group, that's been coming up a lot lately. Like, do I really need to get a sponsor? Do I need to work the steps? Yeah. And it's like, wow.
You want to stay sober? Yeah.
Well, not only just staying sober, because some people stay dry for a very long time. And then they wonder, why am I even doing this? Because they haven't had that spiritual awakening.
Right.
And, unless you allow yourself the opportunity to surrender, to humble yourself, to be open, to be willing, to embrace recovery and embrace a power greater than yourself, whatever that power may be, you're never going to be able to find those cathartic moments that just take so much weight off our shoulders. As I'm listening to your story, it was a trip, because I just went back in time. I just started thinking about how these boulders, I was just dropping these boulders off my back as I started working the steps, and just really started giving everybody around me a break. Everybody around us is just having a human experience. So
yeah. Well, I recently had like emotional sort of bottom, which I heard about sometimes, that you can still have those in sobriety.
Sure.
And I did a 4th step on that emotional bottom. And it was another eye-opening that somehow some of my behaviors reverted back, because drinking is just a symptom, right? That's like medication. It's not, there's a lot of stuff underneath. And it's like, I kind of reverted some of my thinking, some of my actions, some of my behaviors. in certain situations. And, I didn't realize it. And, my sponsor's like, oh, you got to do 4-step. And I'm like, this is crazy. I'm not doing a 4-step of one thing, please. And she's like, nope, sit down and write it. I swear it's going to work. And I'm like, oh, okay. I always do what she says. But my initial instinct is always like, oh, okay. It took me actually 3 days to get through it. And it was another eye-opening experience. I don't really know what normal people do. I don't know how. Maybe you go to therapy or something else, but obviously I don't know. My childhood was very kind of crazy. And so I guess I carry all this stuff. And I think that's what AA does for me. If I continue the work, I continue growing and changing, and I don't necessarily go back. I mean, this was like one instance that I sort of went back, but I still had a tool to get me out of that, right? I had a way to figure out what was wrong. As soon as I figured, like, something's not right, I'm not feeling connected, I was able to use the steps in my everyday living. That's part of the whole process, the whole program that the 12-step talks about, taking the 12 steps into your daily living. And there was one huge example, and I've been sharing about that because it's a piece that I'm always kind of like, can I really carry it in my everyday living? And here it is. Yeah, it's happening.
For sure. No question about it. But here's something that we haven't covered in depth at all, and that is sober courage.
Yeah.
So now we've got your story. We know all about Maggie Shores. Now we need to know all about sober courage and where that came from. Where was the inspiration and where you're at with the project today?
So sober courage is 2.5 years old. And the idea behind it was to be open about recovery. And, I kind of went back and forth with the 11th tradition and tried to figure out how this is all being worked and talked to a bunch of people. So I think the rule right now is, or that's the way they're presenting 11th tradition, is that if you show your face and you say your name, then you can only say 12-step program as referring to AA.
Uh-huh.
So what was happening for me was that I think the anonymity piece became too much. I was starting to feel like I was two split people. And where I go in my area, people are very closed about it. Even if you pass someone on the street or in the grocery store, you don't ever mention even the word meeting. It's not done. And I live in this, a big city, so I'm not sure what that's about, but that's their thing. But for me, it just was really difficult. I started feeling like I was two people again. When I was drinking, I was like 5 people. Anywhere I went, I was a different person. In recovery, I want to be one person, and I want to be honest, and I want to be able to be open, and I want to be able to be honest, really honest. I want to be one person. I want to be honest.
Right.
And it started being really difficult because recovery is such a huge part of my life. It's huge. Like I said, we do everything with our family. We go to picnics and trips, and all of our friends, maybe not all, but most of our friends are in recovery. Our family, my husband's family is in recovery. So it's huge. So it's really hard not to just talk about it. So sober courage was my foot forward to be open about recovery. And the other idea for the blog was I wanted to give straight sort of tools on how to stay sober, because I read a lot of blogs and stuff and people talk about their journeys, and I think that's great. I think there's nothing better than reading how someone feels on their second day sober. But I thought what was missing was how do you stay sober? What do you do that day? What can you do to not pick up a drink? Do you call somebody? Do you go somewhere? Do you go to a meeting? Do you get online? Do you, all these things? And that's how the idea for Sober Courage came up. So it's like a combination. So I'm open on the blog, my pictures there. Did I just screw up my anonymity? I don't know. Sorry.
No, especially not on this show, since we don't have any.
We don't have any.
I am not anonymous.
But I know. I don't even know how this works anymore, but I'm trying. It's hard. So anyway, what was I saying?
You just explained Sober Courage, and
Yes.
It's beautiful and it's perfect. What's happening lately, big time, is that the transition between the concept of anonymity and the concept of crushing the stigma behind addiction are starting to butt heads. And the beautiful thing is that as social media grows, and especially I think what happened was the Oxycontin epidemic is so massive that if we do not bring a very open topic or make this an open topic for discussion, that if we keep this hidden for just people that are looking for it, it may be too late. It may be too late. The minute you take an Oxycontin, that's it. You're done. You're hooked. And I recently interviewed Katrina King. And Katrina is in a movie called Chasing the Dragon. And it's a documentary on the Oxycontin epidemic. And it interviews real people that were hooked on Oxycontin. That was the gateway to heroin. And every single one of them talks about them taking that first pill and they were off to the races. So once someone has taken Oxycontin, it's too late. They need to know before. There needs to be enough awareness, as far as I'm concerned, everywhere. In the schools, they should be able to reach out to anybody and say, you know what? I'm thinking about doing this, or I might have a drug problem. Who can I talk to? Go talk to Mrs. Stevenson over here. She's an alcoholic. She goes to AA meetings. All right? And she can help you. And what we're doing, I got to tell you, since I started this project, I haven't had one person ask me if I felt like I was stepping on the traditions.
Wow. Well, not really my case.
Really?
That's another topic.
How long ago did you start Sober Courage?
About 3 years ago. Really?
Well,
and I'm just actually entering my personal Facebook where I'm posting more stuff about recovery, which I used to never do. I can pretty much tell you that most of my friends on Facebook are recovery people. They won't never say that, ever. And I can tell that what I'm posting is not being liked, right? Because it's not being liked. Well, there you go.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you a little tip on that, because I have, on my own personal Facebook page, I very rarely post anything about recovery on my personal. So I have the fan page and I have the private group. And the private group is where I post everything. And so I've built that community. And I remember when I accidentally created the Facebook group, Recovery Elevator had a private accountability group, and I said, ooh, I need to have a private accountability group. So I made one, and then I just added a few of my friends to it. And they were like, oh, man, I'm glad you have a private one, because I won't post if it's open. And I was like, I know. I got this. And now it's grown out of control. You know,
I can't keep up. You know, I'm barely ever there. Like, I might hit like sometimes and congratulate somebody, but I cannot keep up.
It's taken a life of its own.
Oh, it's amazing. Yes. It's amazing. And that's great for recovery. I think look, truly for me, anonymity is a huge piece. I don't think I would have ever stepped a foot into a meeting if there was no anonymity or opened my mouth or anything. So I'm not saying that anonymity is bad. For me, I still like to be anonymous. I still the fact that I can go to a meeting and share something and, you know, trust the people that it's going to stay there.
Correct.
But as far as my recovery, the other piece, the advocacy, yes, the fact that we are all human beings. What's his name? I forgot. He's got this great book, but humanizing addiction, giving a face to addiction, because we're all kinds of people. We're no longer just the junkies that, you know, the stereotypical junkies, literally. And then to show that recovery works, I think that's the piece that's hugely missed. We hear about all these horrible things that people do in their addictions. No one's ever out there going, look what this dude's done in the 5 years of recovery. I want to hear that story, because I think when you're in the midst of your addiction, you don't see that. You don't have the hope that goes, yeah, you know, if I get sober, I'm going to have a great life, because you don't see it, right?
Who would know? Who would know?
Who would know?
Why would anyone come up to me or you and say, hey, listen, I think I have a drinking problem. how would they even remotely assume a person
Yes.
that doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't party, right? How am I even approachable, right?
Right.
Where does it even dawn on somebody who doesn't smell like an old cigar, you know what I mean, and have alcohol dripping out of your pores and look like some kind of red sponge, you know, like there's an alcoholic. You know,
I've been there.
Yeah, well, I've been there too, describing myself.
Oh, okay. Just making sure. Because it
You're
sounded
like,
very
hey,
familiar
wait
to
a
me.
minute. No, there has to be some sort of an inclination or some sort of a identification. And I think we've done a really good job of it because in social media, you can separate, you know, you can create groups and you can have topics of discussion. If someone were to go on Google and type, you know, recovery blog or recovery podcast, then that's
Right.
what they're looking for. They're going to find you and they're going to find me. They find the podcast, they find the blog, they start reading, they start listening, and they go, oh my God, this is just what I needed. Then you tell them, hey, join me on Facebook, get into the private group. Boom. Then they jump
Right.
into the private group. And then all of a sudden, here's this community of people that normally have nowhere else to go.
Right.
And now they go, hey, guys, do you know of a meeting near where I'm at? And it just all of a sudden turns into this huge helping network. And for me, it's kind of like the bridge
Yes.
bridge that gets people comfortable with the idea of recovery, comfortable with the idea of socializing with like-minded individuals, comfortable with the idea of going to a meeting, and comfortable with the idea of asking someone for help.
Right. Right.
And
I think
that's
yeah.
what we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's totally amazing. I actually sponsored a girl that was in Tennessee. I'm in Washington, D.C., and we did it on Skype. We did steps on Skype through the phone. I remember thinking to myself, no, I can't do that. This is just weird, blah, blah, blah. And I actually talked to my sponsor, because I actually run things by her. And she's like, well, why not?
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And it was the greatest experience. I think the whole connection with the internet is amazing. I mean, sometimes I think back and I go just 8 years ago and I'm like, gosh, I wish something like this existed. Maybe I would have gotten sober earlier. I mean, I don't know. It's just, I think that if I didn't get court ordered to AA, I don't think I'd had an idea or an inkling where I should go at all. No idea who to call because I didn't know any sober people either. I didn't know anybody in recovery.
Not
and
one.
They say, right. And they say, well, you might be the only big book walking around. Well, yeah, I might be the only recovery person walking around too. And I don't know. I started feeling like this could be good. Drop my shame, my own guilt, and my own stereotypes because I was carrying them for a long time, I think. That's why I was not open about my recovery personally.
I'm grateful for one thing. I'll tell you this much. I will tell you this much. There was no Facebook back when I was drinking and using. And I am so grateful for that.
Yes. Oh, God. I used to call people all over the place. It was crazy. Yeah.
I got rid of all of my old pictures. I remember when I said, I don't ever want to see this person ever again because I don't even know who that is. And now I kind of wish I would have saved some, You
could do the side-by-side.
Yeah.
Photos. I don't have any either. Damn it. No. Yeah.
I'm okay with that. It was pretty bad. Plus, I got really, really fat, and I hate those pictures. So.
Aw. I'm sorry.
All right. So listen, Maggie, I'm so glad you were able to talk more than 45 minutes.
Oh, shoot. Damn it. See how that happens?
I
swear I was thinking today, like 45 minutes? Is he insane? What am I going to talk about?
I go, anytime someone says I can't talk for 45 minutes, we're on the phone for an hour and a half minimum. But there's so much to talk about. There's your story. There's a recovery blog. We got to get into it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get into the topic for the newcomer. Okay, so you ready?
All right. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you 5 questions about early recovery, and you're going to respond with inspiring and insightful answers you can share with our newcomers. Are you ready?
All right. I'm ready.
Let's do this. Okay, number 1, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
I think for most part, it was definitely, denial. Well, the fact was I didn't want to be like my mother. The stigma and the stereotype that everybody, my family just put her down all the time and talked really badly about her. And I just didn't want to be like my mother. And it was really, really hard to accept that I had a problem and, admit that I was an alcoholic.
Maggie, you are such an amazing storyteller. I absolutely love the way you answer questions and tell your story. I can totally relate, and I'm sure many of our listeners can too. Beautifully said, beautifully said. So, number 2, at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
It was definitely my last drunk. That moment where I was trying to decide whether I was going to end my life and drink myself to death or continue. And that connection with, my daughter now possibly growing up the way I did without a mom. That was really crazy coincidence that I called my very first God shot.
Absolutely. I remember it myself. It's thank God for our children. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
And do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to a newcomer that you read in early recovery?
I'm not a book reader, which is really strange, probably to many people.
Too busy.
I'm not. I'm too busy. But I remember reading Living Sober early in recovery, which is a AA literature book. It is a little outdated, so you get a lot of giggles with the language and the things that they recommend that you do for fun. But it's a really, really great book. It's easy to read. And it has like sections in it where, like what do you do when you're bored and stuff like that. So that was great. And I do want to recommend a book because almost everybody that I know that read it, and I've read pieces of it when she was advertising the book because it was just published in October, I believe, last year. But the Sarah Hapula Blackout apparently is a fantastic book. So I would recommend that one.
Blackout, the things I drank to forget. Sarah Hapula. Yes. That's one of I do everything on Audible. And so I got so many recommendations from the ladies that I interviewed that I was like, I got to listen to this book. And the memoir is amazing. Her stories are just like, whoa.
The pieces that I read, I was like, whoa, that's me right there.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Blackout drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Many of those. All right. And then, so number 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Calling people. And that one was really, really hard to learn. We used to call it like the 50-pound phone. It's so heavy you can't pick it up.
Yes.
Except now everybody has cell phones, so that doesn't even make sense. But that's the other thing that my sponsor had me do. She had me call 3 different women in the program every day. 3 different women every day, which I thought was crazy. And what do I say to these people? But let me tell you, when my mom was dying, my stepmom, who became pretty much my mom, when she was passing away, I had all these people to call. And I called a different person every day. I was 3 years sober. And it was the first time I actually totally realized why this was so important. It's huge, huge, huge to build a network and have phone numbers. Because I was determined not to drink, but I had to figure out how to get through this part of my life. And these people that learned how to call in early sobriety, and I still had their phone numbers, they carried me. They carried me for 4+ months through the whole process. So get your phone numbers and call people.
Yes.
Huge.
Yeah, that is huge. And my sponsor told me the same thing. He said, pick 5 people off this phone list that you can call when you can't get a hold of me. Because I can't always be there for you. All right. So you need to be able to reach out to somebody else when you're in danger. So pick 5 people that you can reach out to. Practice calling these people. All right.
Yep.
Even if it's just to say hello. And we used to call it the 1,000-pound phone. Because it was like, oh my God. Right. Just thinking about calling somebody, you're like, oh man, I don't want to call it. But it's so important. And I'll tell my sponsors the same thing. Listen, I'm not telling you to call me on a regular basis because I'm checking up on you. But it's easy to be in recovery when things are going well. Right. But when the shit hits the fan, right?
Yeah.
And you're not accustomed to calling, you won't.
Right.
So it's so important. So yes, beautiful suggestion. And then finally, number 5, if you could give our newcomers only one suggestion, what would it be?
give AA a good chance. Meaning, many of us, especially me, I didn't come to AA willingly. I hated it. I thought, mostly what everybody else thought. It's a cult, it's a religious group. I thought all of these things, that you hear, but it's changed my life. It's absolutely changed my life. And just give it a chance. Go to a bunch of meetings, meet a bunch of people, talk to a bunch of people. And, you don't like one kind of meeting, go to another meeting and go to another meeting. Just give it a really good chance because it really does work.
Absolutely beautiful. Amen, sister.
Yeah.
All right. Maggie, great suggestions. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks. So this was great.
This is so much fun.
Such a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, folks, we have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the Share Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.thesharepodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12-Step Recovery and the impact it had in our lives, we do not promote or endorse any 12-Step Anonymous program.